G'day guys, welcome to another round of cheap crap from China. I'm trying some new lighting and focus settings today, so let me know how it goes, but another big pile of posts, so let's get into it. Pretty much all of these packages are labelled either replacement parts or integrated circuit, so we have servos and pins. So quite a lot of, I think they're 20cm, male to male, DuPont style wires. Very handy for patching between Arduinos and various little modules. Whatever the case may be, I have quite a lot of them. Here's another batch from earlier. These are male to female ones. And shorter ones. Male to female, male to female, female to female. Another long male to female set. So yeah, just very handy, and I've recently bought up a ton, as you can see, just so I have them on hand. There's nothing worse than needing them and not having them, so they're cheap enough. They're maybe, I think each one of those cards is maybe 80 cents, so it's not too bad. And yeah, a pair of these little mini servos, which they're simple enough to drive. They're not exactly high torque, but they're not low torque. Just for actuating various sort of levers and mainly visual stuff. Like if you have a little robot, you want to make it move its face or something, you wouldn't necessarily use those for steering a car, like even a little robotic toy car. You probably want a bigger servo for that. But in terms of like extending an arm to take a sample or offer you up a drink, whatever, there's a lot of different uses for them. One of the good things that I do plan on using these for is a pan and tilt rig. And so for a camera, a little stand where one servo will sit sort of this way to raise and lower the camera, another servo will sit this way to tilt it, to rotate it around side to side, and so then the camera can look basically anywhere. Well, it's not 360 degrees, about 180 degrees, but so it can actually sort of aim and look around. You can also use the exact same premise for, like, people have made little turrets, like little airsoft guns and stuff like that, Nerf gun turrets, using the same sort of thing. That's interesting. A capacitor and a resistor in a static bag. Ah. These I've been waiting on for a while. Password 2 / password 4 / password 8 / whatever number he's at today. He knows who he is. We'll be happy. We've been sort of talking about these for a while and wanting to give them a go. There are air quality sensors, specifically dust sensors. And so they, it's optically based. There's a little port through the center there that I guess that's where the air goes through. But so in short, there's, I believe, a laser and a light detector inside. And so as the sort of particulate matter in the air passes through the laser, it blocks some of the light. And this can very accurately measure how much light was let through or not. So they're used for all sorts of quality control, like in factories and whatnot, to tell how much particulate matter there is in the air. There was just yet another sort of form of sensor I hadn't played around with, so it was worth taking a look at. People keep telling me, oh, you need to use them to figure out if they're usable for a vape, so they can tell how how big a cloud you blew or whatever. Yeah, well, I don't know how well they will pick up the like the vapor from a vape, because it's not smoke, it's not particulate matter, it's actually liquid droplets. So yeah, maybe not. But regardless, that's only a side purpose. They can be used very well for just sort of indoors, just to tell you the sort of quality of the air, how much just generic crap there is in the air. So like even as a smog index for cities and that sort of stuff if you mount it outside. Okay, this one is an Arduino Micro, I believe. Yeah. It's not a nano, like it's shorter than a nano, and it's got micro USB, but it does have the USB. So that makes it an Arduino Pro Micro. The Pro Minis do not have USB, and they have to be programmed by either another Arduino or an AVR ISP tool. Well, that's unexciting. A breadboard. At least this is the good type. You can see the pin numbering. Once again, the focus isn't going to be great for me today, but it's not terrible. You can see the numbering. There's 1, there's 5, there's 10, there's 15. That actually there is sort of the 5 is on the 5th pin, the 10 is on the 10th pin, the 15 is on the 15th pin. If you have a look at some of the previous ones that I've gotten, like these ones, these were a big disappointment. So similar deal, if anything the numbers are actually more readable, except that they don't mean anything. This 0 here is already between the 2nd and 3rd pins. The 5 is then sort of 5.5 pins over from that. The 10's another 5.5 pins over from that, and so on and so forth. Up here to 60, where there's then 1 more pin left over. So the numbers, if anything, are closer to correlating with the power bus. And like 0 to 5 there's pretty much correct, but then 10 gets a bit out of step, 15 gets more out of step, 20. By the time you get to 30, it's completely one whole bank out. So the numbers basically just don't correlate to anything at all. They're just there for show, so it looks good in the picture or whatever, so people will buy them. But yeah, they're not quite so useful. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. This was one item that I actually managed to accidentally confirm on AliExpress. So I already confirmed delivery for it even though I hadn't actually received it. And I ordered that sort of early February. So it's been quite a while in posting. But to be fair, that was also, I had quite a few problems with packages from that time because mid-February was the Chinese New Year, and so they all shut down there for about 2 weeks. And so yeah, that caused a lot of problems with shipping. Some sellers that would they've marked the item as shipped and given me a shipping number because they've generated the shipping code in their system, but they haven't actually printed the label and put it on a package and sent it. And when they got back, they just didn't catch up properly with those orders or something. I don't really understand what the hell went on there, whether they were purposefully trying to rip people off or not. But sort of a month later, you'd get a message through on the tracking saying shipment cancelled because the shipping provider had cancelled that number because they'd never received a package for it. And so then there's probably about half a dozen, maybe even a bit more packages that I had to open up disputes on AliExpress, and well, not actually disputes, just sending messages to the seller and saying, hey, look, the shipment's cancelled. What are you going to do to fix this? And pretty much all of them except 2 said, yeah, oh, no worries, we'll resend it right now. One said, no, we can't supply that part anymore, so we'll give you a refund over PayPal. Like, no, I've done that before, and PayPal takes about 20% of whatever you refund as fees because of the way they send it. So yeah, that was a bit of a rort. But yeah, eventually convinced them to put it through as an Ali refund. So then I got all my money back, credited straight back onto the credit card. The last one gave me a run around that they've got different parts now. They can't provide that item anymore. Would I like a replacement or would I like a refund? Yada, yada, yada. Danced around with that for a while. They also went down and said, do you want a refund by PayPal? I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing that shit again. I've done it once and it burnt me. I'm not touching it. They went, okay, well, do you want us to organise a refund through AliExpress? I went, yes, okay, please do that. I actually reordered the items through a different seller. And then about a week later, the first people came back and said, oh, we actually can get those items now, so we've reshipped them for you. So I'm like, well, I actually don't want them anymore. I've already ordered them from someone else. They're like, oh, well, we've already shipped it. Too late. Bad luck. You've got to pay for it, like, if it arrives. So yeah, whatever. All right. And so they did arrive, and so yeah, they got paid, and I don't really need two of what I ordered there. It was a bunch of magnets, but shit happens. I'm sure I'll make use of them someday. Those magnets, by the way, are here and here. And so I've already managed to break two. They didn't ship enough spaces to actually go with the magnets, and so if you, yeah, they're very strong. Like, that's already repelling from there. So they've got quite a lot of force. And so the idea with these was I have an rather large electromagnet, like a lifting magnet. It's rated to like lifting 100 kilos or something like that. So the idea is that using that and one of these fixed magnets, I should be able to actually repel the magnet. And so I can make a little levitation rig, which has just been something I wanted to toy around with for quite a while now. It's not really an ideal setup because it's only a single coil, so I don't have any lateral control or angle control or anything like that. All I can do is distance, so I'm going to have to make a rig to hold the item in the right place, but something to play around with at any rate. That module was just another Arduino Pro Micro. Nothing too fancy there. And we have one more micro USB. This one is yet another Arduino, but with a twist. Yes. So this one, I'll even take it out of the bag because it's something new and interesting. This one is an Arduino Nano-like device. No, this is just an Arduino Nano. Never mind me. There's a red one and a yellow one arriving, and yeah, I guess it's the red one that's different. One of them I found is a sort of Chinese clone that they've made. There has been the GM328 for a while, which is a Chinese clone chip that's sort of Arduino-like, and it will accept the same code as an ATmega328, but it's not an ATmega328. It's not made by Atmel. It's a completely different Chinese special chip, which people would be screaming, oh god, counterfeit, terrible, nasty, don't touch it, yada yada yada, except that it's actually quite a bit better. It's got more flash, more RAM, better peripherals, it can run faster, just everything about it is sort of +1 on what the Arduino, like the standard chip in the Arduino, the ATmega328, can do. So yeah, it's something interesting that I've been wanting to play around with. That's the GM328. There is one other one which is a yet another new chip which seems to be +1 again. So they've gone into really sort of customizing things where apparently it's not actually bytecode compatible with the Arduino anymore. You can't use code for an ATmega328 on it. It has to be compiled specially for this chip. But it still uses the same compilers and whatnot. It's just a different flag. So that'll be sort of interesting to see. I've got, yeah, both the GM328 and this other clone. I'm not sure of the name of it. All I could find for it was the name in Chinese. I did find a datasheet for it in English, which was nice, but yeah, the part numbers and that is all confusing. So I'll leave that for now, but when it shows up, I'll be sure to go through it. I seem to have lost my knife. There it is. So no idea what's in these boxes. There's two of them. They look like they're from the same vendor. And they both say replacement parts. This is another one of those dust sensor modules. So similar to this one, again, just a different brand, completely different type of sensor. This one is a sharp sensor. These have typically been very expensive, this small one, but just recently they seem to have become available for a lot cheaper. Whereas this one has always been a bit cheaper. Obviously it's not as compact. I don't know what the precision is like compared to the sharp, and judging by the interfaces on it, the two trim pods, I'm getting the feeling it may be more of like a threshold detector or something like that, whereas the sharp, I believe, has a full serial protocol that it will actually give you it has its own internal ADC, and then will give you the values that you can look at in software. This one I'm not so sure about. I haven't even actually found a pinout for this one yet, but I do plan on giving these a go at some stage. There is a chip on that one, but it's going to be a bit of a pain to pull part number off, certainly on camera. Still, I'll make a dedicated video looking at those two at some stage. At the dust sensors, I also have a bunch of the MQ gas sensors, which you may or may not have seen. They're again just sort of air quality sensors, but these ones are specifically, they're analog sensors tuned to detect specific chemicals in the air. And being what they are they're a little bit vague in that they actually detect, like each one of them detects a whole range of different chemicals. But there's enough of the sensors out there on the market, enough different varieties of even the same series of sensor, the MQ sensor. I think there's about probably 15 or 20 different types, different suffixes. Some for alcohol, some for benzene, some for carbon monoxide, some for carbon dioxide, so on and so forth. And when they say what they're for, that is what their peak response will be to. And so they will still have a response to other chemicals, but not as dramatic a response. So with that, there's some sort of room for having multiple sensors in a project, and then sort of computing the results and looking, hey, look, we got a spike on carbon monoxide, we got a spike on carbon dioxide, but it was significantly smaller. So that is most likely the carbon dioxide picking up carbon monoxide, and the carbon monoxide is actually what's present. Carbon dioxide is not. So there's a lot of vagaries there. Sort of, I don't know whether software is really going to be able to make that distinction, or possibly we can go all out and go neural net on its ass and see what happens there. But certainly for just generic air quality control, like if you're telling if there's natural gas in the air and whether to evacuate a building and that sort of stuff, when concentrations get high enough, they can certainly tell you that. Okay, so these are oldies but goodies. NRF24 L01 modules with amplifiers. So they are a 2.4 gigahertz radio, so this will be just a generic sort of Wi-Fi antenna. So you can probably even see the pin out there. Might have to focus manually for you. But yeah, just very basic sort of generic serial interface, SPI, power, ground, whatnot. And so these ones they quote as saying you can get up to 1.5 kilometers of range with. Frankly, I say complete bullshit to that. Maybe if you're at 20,000 feet and you have clear line of sight between the two, the transmitter and receiver, then maybe you might get those sort of figures. More realistically, the ones without this sort of big antenna and an amplifier, they are sort of room range, maybe house range. So by the time it goes through a couple of walls, the signal's gone. they're still very much useful if you want to have sort of a sensor just outdoors on your back deck or sort of somewhere like that, up on your roof. Sure, they can transmit through the single wall, like your tiles and your roofing, or through a wall, to get to a base station inside that can then report on it, or can then connect to Wi-Fi or what have you. They can be quite a bit lower power than things like Wi-Fi, like the ESP8266, and because these aren't a microcontroller in one, sort of the ESP8266 is the Wi-Fi peripheral and a whole microcontroller in the one chip, whereas this is just a radio. There's nothing too fancy going on with it. So you can actually shut down this entire device from another microcontroller, which if you're in a battery-driven application, you can choose a microcontroller that has very, very low power consumption, and then, yeah, only wake this up when you need to, send a burst, shut it down again, and you're good to go. The protocols that you use on this, it's generally known as 2.4 gig proprietary protocols. It's not, and by saying proprietary there, I don't mean that it has a specific proprietary protocol that it uses. It means that this is the device you use to implement your own proprietary protocols. So there is no real framework around it. It's not like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or anything like that, where it's all the radio structures all built in place for you. It's very much sort of more open. It's just you can pick your modulation scheme, whether it's frequency shift keying or quadrature encoding or whatever. You can pick from several different encoding schemes. You can pick your bit rate, and then you can have your own protocol on top of that of the actual ones and zeros that are going back and forth, what error correction you want to include, so on and so forth. Of course, these days it's all already built for you. There's sort of Arduino libraries just to use these as a serial port to connect between two different modules, so you don't have to dive right down into it if you don't want to, but you can. And so from these, you can even turn these into sort of, I guess in theory, you could use these as Wi-Fi sniffers and that sort of stuff as well, because they are still on a 2.4 gig band. But whether they have the data rate and such for those sort of communications is, yeah, I don't think they do. But so these ones are, I got these initially for my housemate because he was thinking about setting up something right out in the backyard for he's got a little veggie garden. And he wanted to have something out there for monitoring sort of soil moisture and air humidity and temperature and even sunlight to tell how much sun they got through the day. And so these were sort of what I recommended, to say, well, if you're going to try and go from right out in the backyard, through the back deck, through the back wall, through your bedroom wall, into your room, you're not going to do that with a generic module with no fixed antenna, no amplifier or anything like that. So that was where these came in. So I believe these should do that without too much drama, but again, we'll see, and I'll report back on that when I have some results. But that seems to be it for today. Ran out of packages. Once again, a smattering of random stuff. The dust sensors I'm really interested in. I will be checking those out over the next few days, I think, and reporting back on. But otherwise, I'll hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.